The 1970s didn't just give us good action movies, it gave us dangerous ones. Films shot in real war zones, starring real criminals, directed by men who genuinely didn't care if anyone got hurt. While everyone's rewatching the same 5 classics, an entire decade of raw, unfiltered cinema is sitting on free streaming platforms right now, completely ignored. Which one are we starting with? Number 10, Rolling Thunder. Here's the thing about Rolling Thunder that nobody talks about at dinner parties. This film was written by Paul Schrader, the same man who wrote Taxi Driver, and it carries that same suffocating darkness. But while Taxi Driver became a cultural monument, Rolling Thunder got shoved into the corner like an embarrassing relative nobody wants to acknowledge. That is a crime against cinema. And today, we are correcting the record. William Devane plays Major Charles Rain, a Vietnam prisoner of war who returns home after years of brutal captivity only to discover that America has moved on without him. His town throws him a parade. He gets gifted a jar of silver dollars, one for every day he was held captive. He smiles through it all with the dead eyes of a man who left his soul somewhere in a Hanoi prison camp. Within days, a gang of criminals invades his home, murders his family, and shoves his hand into a garbage disposal unit. What they don't realize is that they have just activated something that cannot be switched off. Devane doesn't play this role with Hollywood heroics. He plays it with a cold, mechanical detachment that is genuinely unsettling. His co-star Tommy Lee Jones, in one of his earliest major roles, delivers the same energy. These are not men who want revenge in the way action movies usually frame it. They want completion. They want to finish something that war started. Critics at the time were deeply uncomfortable. Some called it nihilistic. Others said it glorified violence. Roger Ebert famously refused to review it on moral grounds, a decision that actually made more people rush to see it. The film barely made back its budget, but developed one of the most devoted cult followings in 1970s action cinema. Quentin Tarantino loved it so much he named his production company Rolling Thunder Pictures. That endorsement alone should tell you everything. Number 9. The outfit. Robert Duvall in the 1970s was operating on a frequency that Hollywood has never quite managed to recreate. He was magnetic without trying, threatening without raising his voice, and in The Outfit, he delivers a performance so quietly furious that it feels like watching a controlled explosion in slow motion. This film is lean, mean, and ruthlessly efficient, and almost nobody is talking about it. Based on a novel by Donald Westlake writing under the name Richard Stark, The Outfit follows Earl Macklin, a career criminal who gets released from prison and immediately discovers that the mob killed his brother for robbing one of their banks. Rather than run, Macklin does something extraordinary. He decides to rob every single mob-connected establishment he can find until they either pay him what he's owed or send someone capable of stopping him. Spoiler alert, they struggle to find someone capable of stopping him. What makes this film extraordinary is its tone. Director John Flynn refuses to glamorize anything. The violence is sudden and ugly. The criminals on both sides are tired, aging men doing dirty work. There's no cool jazz soundtrack swelling over shootouts. There's just consequence, over and over again, mounting like debt. Robert Ryan appears as the mob boss and delivers his final major screen performance here before his death later that same year. Watching him and Duvall share scenes is watching 2 generations of American film craft collide in real time. Karen Black rounds out a supporting cast that elevates every single scene she enters. The film made a modest profit and then essentially vanished from public conversation. Film historians have slowly been rescuing it, and streaming platforms have quietly made it available for free. It deserves every single viewer it can get. Number 8. Charlie Varick. Don Siegel directed Dirty Harry. Most people know that. What most people don't know is that 2 years later, Siegel made something arguably smarter, tighter, and more purely satisfying than his most famous film. Charlie Varick is a masterclass in how to build a thriller around a genuinely clever protagonist, and Walter Matthau in the lead role is one of the great casting surprises of the entire decade. Charlie Varick is a small-time crop duster who moonlights as a bank robber after a heist goes catastrophically wrong and his wife is killed. Charlie discovers something horrifying in the bag of money they manage to escape with. The cash belongs to the mob, not a local operation. The actual organized crime infrastructure that will send a genuinely terrifying professional killer named Molly to retrieve every single dollar. Joe Don Baker plays Molly with such cheerful, efficient menace that he essentially steals the entire film from underneath Mathau's nose. Baker gives Molly a terrifying quality, a man who simply enjoys his work without malice. He's not angry, he's not dramatic, he just completes assignments. Watching him track Varick across the American Southwest is like watching a nature documentary where the predator is having a wonderful time. What elevates Charlie Varick above standard thriller territory is Mathau's performance. Charlie is genuinely smart. He doesn't win through luck or physical superiority. He outthinks everyone around him, and the film respects his intelligence enough to let the audience follow his reasoning in real time. Critics celebrated the film upon release, but audiences stayed home, possibly confused by the idea of Walter Matthau as an action lead. Their loss. The film is available free right now and absolutely worth your evening. Number 7. Hard Times. Charles Bronson was already a star by 1975, but Hard Times is the film where he proved he could act rather than simply inhabit screen space through sheer physical presence. This is Walter Hill's directorial debut, and the fact that the man who would go on to direct The Warriors and 48 Horrors chose this story for his first film tells you something important about his artistic instincts. Set in Depression-era New Orleans, the film follows Cheney, a drifter who arrives with almost nothing and begins fighting in illegal bare-knuckle matches to survive. He partners with a small-time hustler named Speed, played by James Coburn in full charismatic chaos mode, and together they work their way through increasingly dangerous fights while trying to stay ahead of debts, dangerous backers, and the general misery of an America that has run out of goodwill for its own citizens. Bronson barely speaks throughout the entire film. Entire sequences pass with him communicating exclusively through physical stillness and the occasional devastatingly well-timed glance. This is not the Bronson of Death Wish sequels where he became essentially a walking grimace delivering quips. This is Bronson as a genuine actor, letting the camera find something real in a man who has clearly survived things he will never discuss. The fight choreography is remarkable for 1975. Hill shoots the bare-knuckle matches with a documentary roughness that makes every punch feel earned and every knockout feel genuinely dangerous. There's no triumphant music, no slow-motion glory shots, just two men in a circle of desperate people, solving problems the only way available to them. Critics adored it. Audiences gave it a warm but modest reception. Today it sits as one of the most underappreciated debut features in American cinema history, and it costs you nothing to watch it tonight. Number 6. Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia. Sam Peckinpah made this film immediately after the studio battles that almost destroyed him during Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and you can feel every single one of those bruises on screen. This is a film made by a man with nothing left to lose, which is precisely what makes it one of the most ferociously personal action films ever committed to celluloid. Warren Oates plays Benny, a down-and-out piano player in Mexico who gets offered a fortune to deliver the severed head of a man named Alfredo Garcia. What follows is not a thriller in any conventional sense. It is a descent, a meditation on what dignity costs and whether anything is worth the price of total moral surrender. Benny makes choices in this film that would disqualify him from audience sympathy in almost any other movie. Peckinpah dares you to follow him anyway. The film was savaged on release. Critics called it repellent, self-indulgent, and unwatchable. Audiences stayed far away. It earned back only a fraction of its budget and was widely considered one of the disasters of Peckinpah's career. Time has reversed that verdict completely. The film now appears regularly on lists of the greatest American films of the 1970s, and Oates' performance is considered one of the finest of that entire decade. Peckinpah himself said it was the only film he made exactly as he intended, with no studio interference. That freedom radiates from every frame, including the uncomfortable ones, especially the uncomfortable ones. It is raw, strange, and completely unlike anything else on this list. Number 5. Electra Glide in Blue. Most people have never heard of this film. That is the injustice we are addressing right now. Electra Glide in Blue is a 1973 film directed by James William Guercio, who was primarily known as a music producer, and it is one of the most visually stunning and thematically complex action films of the entire decade. Robert Blake stars, and he is absolutely magnetic in a role that the film eventually turns inside out. Blake plays John Wintergreen, a short-statured motorcycle cop in Arizona who dreams of becoming a detective. He gets his shot when a murder case lands in his jurisdiction, and he impresses the lead detective enough to earn a transfer. What Wintergreen discovers is that authority and justice are not the same thing, and that the systems he has devoted his life to serving have very little interest in serving him back. The film was shot by Conrad Hall, the legendary cinematographer behind Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and the Arizona landscape has never looked more simultaneously beautiful and threatening. Hall frames Wintergreen as tiny against vast skies and enormous highways, a visual argument about individual significance that operates throughout the entire film without ever needing to be stated out loud. The ending is genuinely shocking, not in a gratuitous way, but in the way of a cold bucket of water, the kind of ending that explains exactly what kind of film you have been watching all along. Critics were divided. Some called it brilliant. Others found it manipulative. Audiences were confused, but haunted. The film has since been recognized as a genuine American classic hiding in plain sight. Number 4, Prime Cut, Gene Hackman and Lee Marvin in the same film. Released in 1972, directed by Michael Ritchie. How is this not one of the most discussed action films of its era? Prime Cut is gloriously strange, genuinely menacing, and operates with a confidence in its own bizarre premise that is deeply refreshing to encounter. Marvin plays Nick Devlin, a Chicago mob enforcer sent to Kansas City to collect a debt from a cattle baron named Mary Ann, played by Hackman in full villainous glory. What Devlin finds when he arrives is a criminal empire that has found creative ways to combine the livestock business with other, considerably darker industries. The film does not linger on the darkness, but establishes it clearly enough that you understand exactly how dangerous everyone in the frame actually is. Hackman plays against type here in a way he rarely got to do during this period. He is oily, charming, and deeply threatening in a way that his more heroic roles often prevented. Watching Hackman and Marvin circle each other across the Kansas plains is one of the great pleasures available in 1970s cinema. Two absolute masters of craft operating at full capacity with material worthy of their abilities. Sissy Spacek appears in an early role and is luminous despite having relatively limited screen time. She brings a quality to her scenes that makes you understand immediately why she became one of the defining actresses of the decade. The film was controversial on release for several of its thematic elements, made a modest profit, and then essentially disappeared from mainstream conversation. Find it. Watch it immediately. Number 3, Coffee. Pam Grier didn't wait for Hollywood to create a role worthy of her abilities. She went out and became the template that Hollywood has been trying to recreate ever since. Coffee is not just an important blaxploitation film. It is one of the finest action films of the 1970s regardless of genre classification, and the central performance is a masterwork of controlled fury and tactical intelligence. Grier plays Coffee, a nurse who decides to dismantle the drug networks that have destroyed her community after conventional systems fail repeatedly to deliver any meaningful justice. She does this essentially alone, using every resource available to her and refusing to accept limitations that the world tries to impose. The film is driven by rage, but it is organized. Purposeful rage with clear targets and relentless follow-through. Director Jack Hill understood that Grier was not simply a star vehicle waiting to happen. She was a genuinely gifted actress with extraordinary screen presence, and he built the film around what she could actually do rather than what was conventionally expected of her. The result is a film that feels ahead of its time in ways that continue to reveal themselves on repeat viewings. The film was made for approximately $500,000 and earned over $2 million on initial release, a commercial success by any measurement that applied to independent filmmaking in that era. Critics who bothered to engage seriously with it recognized its quality. Many critics did not bother to engage seriously with it, which tells you something about criticism in 1973 that remains worth considering. Quentin Tarantino cast Greer and Jackie Brown partly as a tribute to this film and this performance. That tribute was completely warranted. Number 2, The Long Goodbye. Robert Altman pointed his camera at Raymond Chandler's most famous detective and then did something that felt almost like an act of deliberate provocation. He made Philip Marlowe confused, unkempt, perpetually out of step, and oddly lovable in a Los Angeles that had moved so far beyond him that he barely registered as a participant in his own story. The result is one of the most unique and rewarding action thrillers ever made. Elliot Gould plays Marlowe in 1973 instead of the 1940s, and rather than updating the character to fit contemporary coolness, Altman and screenwriter Lee Brackett did the opposite. They kept Marlowe exactly as he was and let the modern world reveal him as a complete anachronism. He still uses the same old-fashioned slang. He still operates by a code of honor that nobody around him shares or even recognizes. He is, as the film eventually makes devastatingly clear, a man who belongs to a world that no longer exists. Vilmos Zsigmond's cinematography is extraordinary, using a technique of continuous slight exposure shifting that gives Los Angeles a dreamy, slightly hallucinatory quality that matches Marlowe's disorientation perfectly. The film looks unlike anything else from the decade, which contributed to audience confusion on initial release. Critics were genuinely divided. Some called it a masterpiece. Others found the deliberate pacing frustrating and the tonal ambiguity irritating. The studio had no idea how to market it and botched the initial release so thoroughly that the film barely found an audience. It was re-released with different marketing and found considerably more traction, eventually becoming recognized as one of Altman's finest achievements and a landmark of 1970s American cinema. Number 1. Across 110th Street. Some films earn the top position simply by being extraordinary. This film earns it by being extraordinary and also by being one of the most honest depictions of urban American life ever committed to mainstream cinema, wrapped inside an action thriller framework so expertly constructed that you're already 3 acts deep before you realize the film has been systematically dismantling everything you expected from it. Barry Shear directed this film with a raw, documentary quality that makes contemporary crime films look almost theatrical by comparison. The story begins with a robbery. 3 men from Harlem steal a massive sum of money from a mob-connected gambling operation, killing several people in the process. What follows is a 3-way chase involving the Harlem police, the Italian mob, and the black organized crime operation that runs the neighborhood, all pursuing the same 3 men through the same streets with very different intentions. Anthony Quinn plays a police captain who operates in a morally complicated space that the film refuses to simplify. He takes money. He makes accommodations. He is also, in some fundamental way, genuinely trying to do a job in a system that makes honest work almost impossible. Yaphet Kotto plays the younger detective assigned alongside Quinn, and the tension between them carries an entire film's worth of commentary about race, authority, and generational change in American policing. The Bobby Womack soundtrack is extraordinary. The title song became one of the defining pieces of 1970s soul music and was later famously used by Quentin Tarantino and Jackie Brown, introducing it to an entirely new generation of listeners. The music doesn't decorate the film. It argues with it, comments on it, and occasionally contradicts it in ways that deepen everything happening on screen. What makes Across 110th Street genuinely special beyond its considerable technical achievements is its refusal to offer comfort. The 3 men who committed the robbery are not romantic antiheroes. They are desperate people making choices that lead somewhere terrible. The mob enforcer pursuing them is capable of genuine cruelty. The police are compromised. Harlem itself is shown as a community under siege from multiple directions simultaneously, and Shear's camera never looks away from the consequences of that siege. The film was made for just over $1 million. It earned considerably more than that on release, particularly in urban markets where audiences recognized the authenticity of what they were watching. Critics noted its power, but occasionally flinched from its uncompromising content. Today, it is considered one of the essential American films of the 1970s, a film that told truths about its moment that more celebrated productions carefully avoided. It is streaming free right now. It has been sitting there, waiting for exactly the kind of audience that watches this channel. Do not make it wait any longer. 10 films, all free. All from a decade that made action cinema feel genuinely dangerous rather than manufactured for merchandise opportunities. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which one you're watching first, or tell us which 1970s gem we criminally left off this list. And here's the question that should keep you up tonight. If these films are this good and this available, why are we still paying to watch watered-down, algorithm-approved versions of the exact same story every single weekend?